And I have a second question here from Owen. He asks me, as human beings, our DNA has certain biological makeup. One of these is the drive to procreate. However, our planet is overpopulated, and it would seem an awakened approach to this is to limit or to reduce the number of humans by controlling birth. I have read that enlightened masters have no room in their existence for procreation or even sex. If we see this as a scale, with natural biological instincts on one side and awakened state on the other, does it mean that an awakened person is no longer driven by these instincts? Or is it that these instincts are still present and an awakened person is able to choose if he acts on the biological impulses or to act in a different manner that perhaps he or she is called to? Yes, interesting question, Owen. And here is my answer to you. Yes, as human beings, our DNA does have a certain biological makeup. And you talk about the fact that there can be a drive to procreate, yet our planet's already overpopulated. Well, I would agree that an awakened approach to deal with this would be to reduce or limit human beings by controlling birth, Planned Parenthood, or whatever we want to call it. And you say that enlightened masters have no room in their existence for procreation or even sex. Well, it depends on the one concerned. It depends. There's no rules. But very often, there is not the desire to procreate. Speaking from my own experience, because I was sterilized at a very early age, because I knew that having children and giving birth to babies, if you're going to do this properly, it takes a lot of energy. And I knew that if I became a mother, I would give a lot of energy and attention to my children, to my family, and I didn't really feel that was what I came to this planet for. So I chose consciously not to have children. And this about enlightened masters not having sex. Again, there's no rules. The sexual energy can be used for enjoyment. It can also be totally misused. We see a lot of this on the planet today. And it can also be used in a conscious, more enlightened way by two people in a loving relationship. It can be used to give some kind of pleasure, to share energies on a very deep level, to express the love one has for each other, to express it physically. And sex doesn't have to bring you down. Conscious lovemaking will lift you and not pull you down onto a lower vibration. But saying if someone's awake, they won't have sex, this is just not true. What I do see, and you point to this also, Owen, you ask, does this mean an enlightened being is no longer driven by these instincts? I'd say yes, eventually. But you see, even after awakening, there can be vasanas, tendencies, that still have to be burnt out, purified. After this happens, instincts can be present, but one is not driven by them, one can choose. And this brings me also to a tricky subject, because as we know, we are seeing the abuse of many disciples and devotees by gurus. And we often see, and I've experienced this, I've seen it many times, a so-called guru choosing people from the Sangha, usually the youngest or the prettiest, most handsome, having sex with them, telling them it's for their own good and for their own spiritual development. This is a very, very tricky situation. And I have seen, what I have observed, is very often the so-called awakened one, or the so-called guru, is simply using the devotees and disciples to satisfy his or her own physical needs. Now, I'm not being judgmental here, but I just want to say that I would call this going against Dharma. And I would say that when a person is awake, enlightened, or whatever you want to call it, that person is free from the grip of powerful desires that would push him or her to act against Dharma. That's what I would say to you right here and now. I'm soon going to start writing another book on the topic of the guru-disciple relationship, and we'll be addressing such issues as this. You know, I would suggest, if somebody thinks they're awake, or maybe have been told they're awake, they need to look very carefully, perhaps meditate on their desires, feel them. Sometimes there can be these burning desires. You know, feel the burning desire. It can be for sex, for money, for power. These three issues are often the issues that have to be dealt with before one can move beyond fully into the awakened state. You know, these three issues, sex, power and money, they actually belong to the sign of Scorpio astrologically. Ultimately, Scorpio is the spiritual warrior who purifies and transcends the so-called lower vibrational desires. Scorpio can take him or her to the burning ground and purify such desires, whatever they may be. And afterwards, this one can fly free, like the phoenix bird, rising from the ashes. And after Scorpio comes Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. And after the trials and tests, after passing through this in Scorpio, Jupiter brings a new vision. It reaches for the stars. And Jupiter also rules the Guru principle, which lies at the depths of the heart. But it's like these issues, these challenges of Scorpio, have to be faced. One has to move through them to be able to rest in one's true nature. So I suggest, you know, that people can ask themselves this question: would I pursue this idea at the cost of someone else's well-being? Would I pursue this idea, this burning longing, if I knew I was going against Dharma? These could be good questions for people to ask when they find themselves in this kind of challenging situation. So again, Owen, thank you for your fine questions. Namaste.